All right. So, welcome everyone. Hi Mimi and hi Rachel, and welcome to Due Diligence and Art Substack interview. So, I wanted to interview you about your very interesting press release, your work in criminal trying to get some criminal referrals for COVID crimes. So, why don't you guys introduce yourselves and let us know about your a little bit of your background, how you got into this work, and then what your current project is.
Absolutely. So I'm Rachel Rodriguez. I founded Vires Law Group in 2022, and that was as a result of working on a lot of anti-tyranny work. There were not enough lawyers in my profession handling that, so it's kind of wild to see how much there was. It was everywhere. People are familiar with the mandates, and that is shots and masks, but even prior to that, the hospital protocols, which I think we'll talk more about today, just trying to figure out what to do in those spaces. And I was representing people at that time in 2021. And so that's kind of how we got to where we are today. There was a need. Lawyers had to do work on that. And so I was trying to fill that. And in the course of that, I also was able to meet Mimi, and she's been instrumental in the work that Vires Law Group is trying to do at this point.
Great.
And my name's Mimi Miller. I am a former county level prosecutor. And so I actually worked working on criminal cases and prosecuting them and putting people in jail. That's been very, very helpful and very informative as we've undertaken this project to try and get some justice for what's happened in the hospitals and then hopefully soon after with the vaccines as well.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, yeah. And the way I got into this, my dad is a doctor, and he chose to stand up when those mandates came out in Washington State. And so we were kind of involved in that. And so I was familiar with what was going on. But it wasn't really until I got to know Rachel and we connected and started working on this project that I was able to really bring my expertise to it. So
Yeah. Great. So yeah, so I contacted you because, well, we've spoken before, but I saw your press release about the criminal complaints that you want to be happening. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about what's going on?
Sure. So this is something that started actually in 2021. We saw what was happening in the hospitals from 2020 forward, and it became very clear that the legal landscape on the civil action, so that would be civil litigation for injury and wrongful death, that was not going to be a viable option because of the PrEP Act, and other factors that made that very difficult. And unfortunately, that's played out. We've seen that in many of the cases that people have valiantly brought forward in many states. So in 2021, I had a phone call with a couple other attorneys, and we were trying to figure out how can we pursue criminal charges, because we see this as criminal culpability. There was knowledge that what was being pushed as the protocols under the emergency order, under PrEP, and what was paid for by CARES, it was clear that these were known to be harmful, even lethal. And what was known to be life-saving was being demonized and even prohibited or barred, not only from hospitals, but pharmacies, at the policy level. It was it's clear that there was orchestrated effort. And so we believed that there was criminality involved, and we wanted to bring justice to that. Fast forward, we were trying to pursue the right option. We knew that going at the state level, as opposed to trying to ask federal prosecutors, and of course, remember this was now in the Biden administration, so-called, we would not be able to get any justice at the federal level for federal crimes that are also being committed. So we wanted to focus in at the state level where there was jurisdiction by law enforcement in the states. And so I met Mimi in the course of putting those things together, and she really brought to bear her experience and putting together what we call legal briefs. They're basically petitions. And we have talked with constituents in each state. So people who have been injured or whose loved ones passed away, they are coming forward as victims and witnesses, saying to their law enforcement, a crime has been committed against me or against my loved ones, and we're asking you to investigate. We believe there's probable cause for these charges, and we spell out the charges against these individuals. We'll name those people that's at the federal level all the way down to the hospital administration who took the money for the protocols and made the policies. And we're saying all of these people should be investigated. We believe there's probable cause for criminal charges, and we hope that you will then prosecute those, on the basis of your investigation. That's the summation of what this project is. And so in the states where statewide investigation of murder and other criminal charges is available under the procedure, then we go to the Attorney General. Where it's required under criminal procedure that you begin at the jurisdictional level of the counties, we have submitted to the county prosecutors where our victims are located so that there's proper jurisdiction. And then we've sought their criminal referral to the AG so that it can become a statewide investigation. Those who come forward to our office or to former Feds group Freedom Foundation, who has been coordinating with a lot of victims across the country. When they come to us, they're just representing one person represents thousands of deaths in these hospitals. But we are looking forward to seeing the number of people coming forward and being willing to not only petition, but be witnesses to give law enforcement their evidence, the medical records, and so forth. We hope that number increases, but always keeping in mind that you can see what the numbers are from so-called COVID deaths or hospital deaths. You can see what those are. And that's really the magnitude of the crime as to this element of the COVID criminal enterprise. And so in a nutshell, that's what we're doing state by state. We have already submitted our materials, our evidence in 7 states. So you referred to the press release we recently sent out with regard to Arizona and Pennsylvania. And we are resubmitting in Florida. We've got other states that we're working with grassroots in, and we can go over, unpack all of that a little bit. But that's really what the process is. And I'll let Mimi fill in some things here, but I do want to say just yesterday, I got a letter from the Attorney General in Arizona, and I think the audience might find that slightly amusing, but we can go over that in a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. So my question was also, when Mimi responds, I've participated in a similar effort early on, like in 2021. I was part of the effort in the United Kingdom to try to bring criminal charges to get the Met Police to investigate. And despite, thousands of pages of evidence and, people working very hard, ex-policemen going in, talking to their colleagues and lawyers, solicitors, it was a big project, and they all refused, and the Met Police and at the higher level refused. And I'm also aware of similar efforts that were being done in 21 and 22 by Todd Callender, and he was telling us stories that they were going to local sheriff's offices and prosecutors' offices, and everyone refused. Somebody actually, the prosecutor, like locked the office and ran out the back door just not to receive the evidence that they were bringing. So my question is, like, how's your experience been, and as far as the response, and what change do you think in the attitude between 2021 and today?
Yeah. I think yes, so that's a big question. I would say that we've had some people that not quite locking the door and running out the back door, but like not far off. We've had some response where it's, not so interested. We've had a lot of not response as well. We've seen a lot of that, but we've actually started seeing a little bit of response. We've been informed that there have been in 2 of the states, there have begun confidential criminal investigations because of our petitions. So there are some people, there are some law enforcement, some prosecutors who are starting to say, you know what, I'm going to be brave and do what's right. I'm going to actually investigate this. I'm going to actually find out what happened to the people that I swore an oath to stand up and protect and get justice for. And so we're starting to see a change. Now, why is that change? I don't know that I could say for sure. I think that part of it is that people have not stopped telling the truth. All of the victims, all of the doctors that have been whistleblowers, there have been so many people, even though you feel very alone, who have stood up and have told the truth. And when they get shut down, they keep telling the truth.
Mhm.
And because people have not stopped telling the truth, we're starting to see this shift in public understanding. We're starting to see them admit and acknowledge all of these things that we've all known from the start, but they're actually admitting it, like in the media, in the news. The health officials are admitting a lot of things now that they wouldn't before, and so we're starting to see this shift of sort of what's allowed, like what kind of opinion you're allowed to hold. And so because of that shift of public perception, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more interest. But I think you hit on something that's really important in that, we're not now is a time for people to stand up and be brave.
Mhm.
Now's the time for people to stand up and be the hero, to
Exactly.
look at the evil that's been done and do something about it. And so it's
Oh,
really more just, we need to keep telling the truth and just keep encouraging our law enforcement, our prosecutors, our elected officials to actually fight for the truth, to fight for justice, to really investigate it and look at the evidence.
mhm. Yeah, I
To
think,
Mimi's,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
sorry, yeah, this is critical, I think, to emphasize that it is important to continue speaking the truth. Even when you see this, brick wall and you hit it over and over and over again, you have to continue because you're right. At this moment, I also see a lot of change of opinion. People are coming to the realization that this was a huge hoax and an enormous crime. And so I am encouraged, yes, like yourselves, I'm encouraged by what's going on. Yeah, so please go ahead.
Oh yeah, just to that point, everything you guys are saying I fully agree with. And I think it's difficult because many of us have been fighting this for several years and there's real fatigue. Fighting against brick walls is a difficult thing. But I think we need to continue to be encouraged and recognize that anything that we've done to tell the truth and to save lives, really, that's not an overstatement, is worth doing nonstop. And so we will see the result because I believe that there is a spiritual war going on. This is an attack on humans. There is a lot of gaslighting. People have been traumatized. Not only have they had crimes committed against them in all of the enterprise. Again, our project is very focused in on what I call hospital homicide, but there's many, many elements to the entire enterprise and what's happened.
Yeah.
And after they're injured, then they're gaslit. No, that didn't happen to you. You're not at vaccine injured. Your loved one died in a tragic pandemic. We all didn't know what to do. We did the best we could.
Yes.
All of that's not, and that just adds to the trauma
Yeah.
because people need answers. They need to be able to move forward. And I have some interesting tidbits of news. So yesterday I met, was it yesterday? No, excuse me, it was Tuesday. I met with hospital administrators. And I don't know if I should name the hospital, but it's a hospital here in Florida where there were quite a few deaths from COVID. And it's a unique situation because it's a public hospital. And so we can get records through public records requests. There is an accountability to the public. The board is elected by the public. And
Mhm.
so there's been a lot of talk about this particular hospital. And after one woman's husband passed away, he was killed in September of 2021. The first time the administration would meet with her was Tuesday in 2025. And I went there to support her as an advocate. And sure enough, they were fully expecting her to show up, four of them and one of her. They were not happy to see me there. And they took the first 20 minutes or so, I don't think I'm exaggerating, of the meeting trying to find ways to kick me out of the room. And it's very telling when you look at all of this. I don't want to demonize anybody, but we do need to call a spade a spade. Like
Uh-huh.
you're either operating for truth and what's right, or you're not. And what
Uh-huh.
you're advocating for is in fact wicked. And trying to remove a widow's advocate from the room when you have no legal basis is not right. That is not working for the right thing. I think also what was very telling about what we found out is there is that the narrative of defense is it was so unprecedented. We were all trying the best we could. It's such a shame this happened. The reason we may not have done this quite right,
Oh,
not
they're
that they
admitting
did it this
it.
way. No, not that there was an admission, but the reason this may not have turned out the way we all want it to is because we were trying to figure it out as we went, who
Yeah,
knew?
we're
We were
such
we were
confused
talking
babies.
to thought leaders around, our area. We
Uh-huh.
had weekly meet. I mean, they were busy, busy. They were
Uh-huh.
having weekly meetings with other experts in the field from other hospitals. What is the best thing to do here? How are we going to do this?
Uh-huh.
But the outcome of it was this was reasonable treatment
Mhm.
because everyone else thought so.
Mhm. Yeah.
How is that practicing medicine? You never decide on a patient
Uh-huh.
based on what everybody else thinks about all these other patients. I mean, you can consult,
Uh-huh.
but one patient in front of you is having an active cardiac event,
Uh-huh.
and you won't treat it because everybody else thinks that you should stabilize a cold first.
Uh-huh.
That's how medicine was being practiced in that period of time, and that's extraordinarily bad.
Yes, I've had personal experience with this. They tried to kill my mother-in-law in upstate New York in Highland Hospital in Rochester, New York, with the same protocol and the same gaslighting technique. So they even had we've managed to save her only because my husband knows the COO of that whole
Right.
hospital system. And but they were very, very actively trying to kill her. She herself recognized they were trying to kill her. She's a doctor herself. She worked for that hospital system all her life. And so it was undeniable. They were on purpose dehydrating her, isolating her, not feeding her, pretending they ran out of apple juice. Um, then sending the representative of like patient liaison or something like that to gaslight my husband, her son, who is also not spring chicken. He's also from the pharmaceutical R&D space. And they were saying we can't treat, so she's as an elderly person on multiple medications and has blood pressure issues, low blood pressure, by the way. So they were trying to use that against her, and they were removing that medication hoping that she'll collapse from low blood pressure, removing the hydration, and then sending representatives saying, well, we can't treat her other conditions here in this hospital because we only focus on COVID.
That's
And
the problem.
yeah,
Right.
right,
And it was reasonable because everyone else was
because everybody
doing
else
it.
is doing that. Yeah. Hmm.
That's never been the practice of medicine. That's incompetent, and licenses should be pulled for that basis.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's
And I wanted to tell you also, because I mentioned it, this is the first time I'm mentioning this to anybody, so your audience can enjoy. And I jest only because it's so sad. You've got to have some humor.
Mhm.
So Attorney General Mays of Arizona sent me a letter. They named the brief that we filed. Apparently got a complaint number. Didn't even reference anything else, just a complaint number.
Mhm.
Dear Rachel L.T. Rodriguez, this letter is to acknowledge the receipt of the aforementioned complaint. Based on a review of all information provided to our office, it has been determined that your local police department would be your best option to file this complaint. The information you have provided has been logged and will remain on file per the record retention laws of Arizona. So I'm to go against the hospital to my local police
Uh-huh.
in Arizona. Anyways, that's a pretty standard fair response, which is sad. Um, it was sent on April 9th, and I've got to remember when we sent our brief, but I am not certain that it was fully read, if that's the letter that was delivered that short of a time frame around. But anyways,
Right. Yeah. So that's what we've been experiencing is these kind of like they're bouncing everyone into these black holes.
yeah,
Right? Go to your local police department. And the police department is going to run out of the door. you
yeah.
know?
Or the this is the other thing. I think many people have experienced this, and this was particularly cruel, that when somebody sought to advocate peacefully but firmly, the police and security were used to
Mhm.
force the family member to leave their loved one in the hospital.
Mhm.
There's Gail Sealer's husband. Um, I wish I had the update on what happened in their case, but he was going to trial, I believe, and he was being convicted
Mhm.
under criminal laws in Texas
Mhm.
for rescuing his wife from death. She's alive today.
Hmm.
because he took her bodily out of the hospital,
Hmm. Yeah.
and law enforcement criminalized that and are trying to sentence him for it.
Uh-huh.
How can you go to local police departments if that's what was happening during the relevant period?
Yeah. How can you go and complain to the police and then what they'll arrest you for complaining against the hospital,
Right.
right? Yeah. So the
I
yeah.
I
So
would say on that point, just really quickly, you mentioned some of Todd Callender's efforts and some of the reaching out that has been done to law enforcement. We have seen a decent number of law enforcement who have kind of pushed back and said, we believe this is wrong and we want to do
that's
something.
true.
And then in a lot of cases, it appears that there's either a leadership issue within the police department that won't allow them, the ones that are interested in really taking this seriously and investigating, or sometimes you have it be the elected district attorneys or attorney generals have put out policy saying, we're not going to do this, or, if you try and file these charges, we're just going to drop them. So
Mhm.
don't waste your time. And so I think that, it's very individualized. And that's kind of the difficulty with it is it's very individualized who stood up and who's willing to do what's right,
Mhm.
you know. So just just mention
Right.
something.
And on that note, I would encourage, to Mimi's point, I would encourage any law enforcement that might hear this, go ahead. If you see our brief, we're happy to send it to you so you can review the evidence that we have. If you want to pursue an investigation, complete an investigation officially, and seek charges to be, even if you think your DA is not going to be supportive of you, I believe that's very helpful. And I know it takes courage to do that because you could be targeted thereafter for having done so. But I think it's important, and I do think that the dam is cracking. And once there is, and like we said, like Mimi said, there are two investigations currently open.
Mhm.
And once it opens in one place, then everybody's going to have the cover to continue and move forward in their investigations because it's an absolute pattern of conduct,
Mhm.
so clearly a pattern that it's obvious that it is orchestrated. There is a policy that's being spread around all over the country, and
Mhm.
it's operating the exact same way, every single state, thousands of people. So
Mhm.
if one investigation leads to charges in one place, it will do so everywhere. The law will support it everywhere. And Mimi's done a fantastic job of studying the state criminal codes
Mhm.
in all 50 states at this point. And there's a parallel on these types of crimes that are implicated. There's probable cause for specific charges. We're talking murder, manslaughter, anything within that framework of homicide. Um, Even terrorism, where the state has terrorism, criminal charges. You have kidnapping and trafficking, and those come together because the patients are not allowed to leave the hospital, and their bodies and the treatment that's being done to them is garnering financial benefit to the hospital, to the entity that's holding them. And so that meets the elements. You have abuse and misconduct towards vulnerable populations. So that would be your elderly, disabled children, and those who are under a caretaker. And that's we also have the racketeering. I'm
Mhm.
talking about a COVID criminal enterprise. That's racketeering. There's an entire enterprise, and
Yes.
along the way, multiple entities and individuals are complicit in this enterprise and gaining financial benefit from it.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think law enforcement has everything necessary to push forward with investigations. And if they're willing to do that now, we really encourage you to do so. We'll support you. We have more witnesses. We have expert testimony, experts willing to come and testify to a grand jury anywhere.
Mhm.
And then we can work on the next step. If we need to go to the DAs, we'll work on the next step. But I don't think anybody should not pursue what is within their capacity and their jurisdiction to pursue simply because we're not certain about the next step. I think this is the time to really push forward. I think public sentiment is on your side. The truth has always been on your side if you're going to investigate and pursue this. And so I think now is definitely the time to do so.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great message, and I encourage my readers. I have readers in all over the United States, and a lot of them have to do with legal profession or even law enforcement. So please, reach out. I'll put your information in this video and your press release, and so that people can reach out to you with questions.
Thank you.
I'm helping in a couple of cases that are, should be criminal cases. they're currently civil, but at least one is the judge allowed to proceed to discovery, which is
That's
amazing.
incredible.
Incredible.
That because discovery is what people don't want. They don't want truth to
Yes.
come out. They don't want experts to be cross-examined for
Mhm.
what they did. So that's powerful. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, so it's a long shot, but because it's in New York, but this is a woman whose disabled daughter was killed with the COVID protocol, and she was killed with narcotics, and you know,
Yeah.
fentanyl.
How old was she? And I might be familiar with the case, but how old was she?
Yeah, I think she's something like 20 something. If I might be not remembering correctly. But yeah, so it was just, overdose with fentanyl and
Yeah.
yeah.
There's no reason for a 20-something-year-old to die in a hospital.
Yeah, they
There's really
basically
not.
kidnapped her and killed her. And that it's undeniable. There's all the medical records and everything. And yeah, you probably know of the case. We can connect offline, but yeah, it's horrible, horrible what's been done. I mean the Grace Scott Shara's case
I'm gonna mention, yeah.
is going forward, hopefully. But again,
They have trial this summer. It's
they
going to
have
trial.
scheduled this summer, so we are all looking forward to
Yes.
hopefully getting somewhere with this. This is horrendous, horrendous what's been done to people. I know of so many cases. It's just terrible.
And I
So,
really want to applaud Scott and his efforts and Warner Mendenhall and his team on this because, and this is another really important message to tell people, every step to use the analogy, it's a yard that we're taking the ball down the field.
mhm,
The trial itself, regardless of the outcome, is so critical because it's public information and all of this evidence comes out. People have to stand on the witness stand and respond to questions. All the evidence comes out in Grace's case. So regardless of the outcome, which we pray is favorable and demonstrates that she was, that it's wrongful death. But regardless of that outcome, the trial itself is really important. The process here is really important to get this information out.
yeah, yeah. It's critical. So that's what I'm so interested in helping in any way with these efforts. And one other question I had, what is your opinion on how this is related to PrEP Act? Because my personal project right now with a few colleagues is to advocate for repealing the PrEP Act. Ultimately, I know
Yes.
it's extremely long shot, but in the meantime, there are multiple actions that can be taken, such as Secretary Kennedy can remove the PrEP Act emergency declaration for COVID, which would be a huge step forward for removing
Huge.
mRNA completely. Yeah, so that's what my sort of personal on more on the legal legislation and public education part of this. So what is your perspective since you're looking at the criminal and in theory, PrEP Act does not preempt criminal charges.
Right.
So
Right.
what is your perspective on this?
I'm going to let Mimi go into some of the details about the countermeasures and how they apply and where the money's coming from. But on a broader scale, I think what's really important here is we've moved towards the criminal liability, culpability, because just as you said, the PrEP Act does not protect, there's no immunity from liability for willful misconduct and clearly criminal misconduct then, right? Because that is even beyond willful. Um, and and also this how the hospitals were pursuing their protocols and where the money was coming from, the perverse incentives, is all because of the legal landscape, the legislation that set up this scenario to where it could be, and I don't mean to be crass, but almost a chute. It's like patients were put down a chute, and the end of that chute was death.
Mhm.
And there's very few people who survive these protocols, and it's all set up because of the way the PrEP and the CARES Act works. So I'll let Mimi kind of fill in those details, but yeah, it's heavily involved. The PrEP Act needs to be removed completely.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like Rachel said, PrEP Act, the way that it's written, it only applies to civil liability, not criminal. And I think that, if we're able to get someone brave to actually go forward with charges to get criminal convictions, kind of punches a hole through that liability shield
Mhm.
because it shows that that liability shield is gone. It shows that willful misconduct because it was criminal.
Mhm.
Yes.
And like Rachel said, with the enterprise and just some of the finances of it, we have most of the contracts were done. I believe you've posted quite a bit about this through like the DoD. There's
Mhm.
a lot of involvement of intelligence agencies. This wasn't actually health.
Mhm.
This wasn't a health initiative at all. None of the contracts are health.
Mhm.
None of the connections are health. The way that they brought money out to the hospitals through, FEMA, and even there were USAID grants going on, that kind of a thing, is
Mhm.
really atypical and is very, very indicative of bad, of wrongdoing.
Mhm.
When you look at the incentives, the countermeasure incentives, you have things, and I can get the exact numbers, but just the cost of medications that were being reimbursed to the hospitals. So for someone to get remdesivir, it was a little over $3,000, around
Mhm.
$3,000 for a course of remdesivir. If you look at like ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, it's like $2 or $8.
Yeah.
You look at vitamin D and sunlight, that's free, you know? And so it's like there are all these alternative treatments that didn't make the hospitals money
Mhm.
and didn't make the pharmaceutical companies and a lot of our federal officials who had patents or were involved in different projects, it didn't make them money. But
Mhm.
something like remdesivir, where, in 2019,
Mhm.
Robert Redfield and Anthony Fauci were thanked in a study about remdesivir, where remdesivir was pulled from that Ebola study because it killed too many people.
Yeah.
And so it killed too many people in 2019 to be allowed to continue to completion of a study. But in 2020, 2021, and so on, it's now a saving grace that we just give to everybody, even against their consent.
Mhm.
Like that's criminal,
Yeah.
and when we talk about that, like it's obvious. As well, like if they could get a COVID diagnosis, all of the payments from CMS, from Centers for Medicare and Medicaid that went out to the hospitals, if someone got a COVID positive test, there was a 20% just bump in all care, and all care costs to get to the hospitals, which is why some people were tested, 9 times with PCR tests to get a
Mhm.
false or to get a positive.
Yeah.
And if people were put on a ventilator for 72 hours or more, the hospital made $40,000 for just that one patient. And so it's really, when you look at the contracts, when you look at how they were funneling money, it's horrible.
Mhm.
And with the CMS mandates as well, a lot of the policy that was kind of brought down to the hospitals, it was sort of presented in this way where it's okay, either you kill all of these people and we'll give you a whole bunch of money, or you could choose to like not follow our policies. We'll find you non-compliant. We'll
Mhm.
pull your licensing and bankrupt your hospital, yourself, and everyone that works for you, and you'll never be able to work again.
Yeah.
So it was this real evil coordination that happened.
It absolutely is. My personal investigation led me to believe that these COVID wards were federally funded, likely DoD funded, and staffed by they call them traveling nurses, but the staff it's unclear how they licensed, by whom they licensed, where they came from, who they were. But in our personal experience, we've witnessed this because these people were actively trying to kill my mother-in-law. When my son finally reached the COO the next morning, we were in a different universe. Completely new staff showed up, nurses we've never seen before, and completely new protocols. She started getting IV fluids right away, and food and water and everything. So it was very clear that this is a totally separate operation from the standard hospital. And the hospital obviously knowingly allowing it because they're profiting from it. But that was kind of my personal experience, and also what I've seen from how the contracts were structured and things of that nature. So I am encouraged by your progress. I'm encouraged that there are two active investigations. And so what do you think? How do you think next few months are going to evolve for us? I mean, I know I'm asking you to predict the future, but what is what is your expectation?
Well, we're definitely going in the right direction. And whether we were or not, I
Mhm.
think the fight continues. We have to keep going. So the next steps are we continue what we're doing as
Mhm.
much as we can. We press the gas pedal down even more.
Mhm.
Um, and I want to highlight something that Mimi said with regard to where we're going, forward. When we successfully demonstrate that in a court of law, that what happened is criminal with criminal intent, the entire rest of the house of cards goes down.
Yes.
Now you reopen all of the civil liability. I understand there's a statute of limitations problem. Civil cases, well, all cases for the most part, except for some criminal things, have to be brought within a certain period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But we can change that either through the legislature to broaden out statute of limitations for COVID crimes, or for COVID civil claims, I should say. Or we get tolling of the statute of limitations because there's a discovery that now there is liability where there wasn't before because there is a crime committed.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, you immediately get fraud claims under the False Claims Act if you get a conviction in the criminal space. So a lot of things come down with the clarity of what occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe, and this is a little bit further down the road, but my view is there's been a desperate need for financial, it's not even recompense because you cannot actually pay for the damage that's been done to people, but at the very least assistance, because in these cases, and now I speak for beyond the hospital homicide, but also to vaccine injured, their entire lives are turned upside down. Now, in many cases, in the hospital cases, you have the breadwinner of the family many, many times is the person who was killed. And now the family's reeling from, I mean, anywhere from having, being in retirement all the way to having small children. And there is a household that no longer has an income. You don't have, there are people on the vaccine injury side, there are people who are struggling to get disability payments. There is an absolute clear physical need for victims who've been injured. And I believe we need to disgorge all of the hospitals from the billions of trillions across the country, if you put it all together, of money that they received in this perverse manner. And all of that needs to go into victim funds so we can support people who have a need. But I do think the next steps, at least for our team, what we're doing, we're going to keep going. We're very encouraged with everybody that's reached out to our office. Please have patience with us. We are a small office, but we want to get back to everybody. I think that Amy reported to me that we have people from 37 states out of the 50 who've contacted our office.
Great.
So this is an absolutely national issue.
Mm-hmm.
We believe that wherever there are people who want to organize amongst the victims on the ground in your state, pull together people who are ready to stand up and give their contact information as witnesses. They want to petition their law enforcement, and we would be happy to work alongside you. As I said, we actually just resent an updated submission in Florida because now that was October 2023. There's a new AG. There's more evidence that we've put together. And we also got more than double the number of petitioners in Florida coming forward. So you'll see a press release about that probably next week.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also pursuing action in Michigan, South Carolina, Iowa, and Minnesota. That's what we have on deck.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot more people around the country. So we're going to continue to pursue this at the county level, at the state level, and we're just going to keep pressing. And we encourage people to reach out to us. And then after those petitions go out, continue respectfully to reach out to your law enforcement, to your county DAs, to your AG, where these petitions have been sent, and voice your concerns. Say, my loved one was harmed. I am asking you to do what you've promised to your constituents to do, which is to investigate. I think that the biggest problem, it's not the biggest problem, but a very, very big problem is when somebody who's in the position, it is their job, it is their role to their constituents, at minimum to investigate what has been claimed to be a crime and there is a victim. When they refuse to do that, I think they need to be fired from their position. That is exactly what the AG in in Oklahoma has done. AG Drummond now wants to be promoted to the position of governor.
Mm-hmm.
I think he should be fired from the position he's currently in.
Mm-hmm.
Not only did he say there was no claims to be made and that the federal pardon affected his ability to prosecute at a state level, which frankly I believe to be legal incompetence. But now he's sent out another letter to say, and by the way, there are legislators in Oklahoma that are supporting this request for investigation.
Yeah.
This is not a fly-by-night thing. There are legislators who are criminal investigators who are saying you need to look into this. And
Mhm.
now he's saying, I will not. I am not going to prosecute this. And that was not the petition. The petition is please investigate. And when you
Uh-huh.
find probable cause, we ask that you prosecute. But if you refuse to even investigate, that is the job. And I
Right.
consider that to be improper. And that means you're refusing to do your job that you've been elected to do. And so
Mhm.
no, there shouldn't be a promotion. You need
It
to do the job
shouldn't,
as expected.
and people need to know this needs to become campaign issues, I think,
Yes.
because I believe, for example, Paxton is also running for, I
Yeah.
think, Senate seat.
Yeah.
So, so these AGs need to know that this will become a make or break issue for their future political aspirations.
It will. Now, in Texas, I do want to be clear on this because this is where the procedure does come into play, and I don't want there to be misunderstanding.
Mhm.
Paxton has been supportive of this initiative,
Mhm. Oh no,
but
yeah, I know he's
In
because he's
Texas, it's required that the county refer the case to the AG. The AG does not have the jurisdiction on something of this nature to start the statewide investigation. And
Mhm.
so he's even gone on Twitter and said that to Dr. Malone. And so we are calling on the DAs in Texas to whom we've sent the petition. There are state resources that are
Mhm.
available. And I believe that you would find a favorable AG willing to pursue this and to
Mhm.
provide more resources to your county to pursue this.
Mhm.
So, and that's also the case in Louisiana. Louisiana requires the county to make a referral to the state. That's going to be the case in some of these other states that we're in. So we're just asking people within the procedure. We're not asking for something outside procedure. Within the procedure of your state laws, be brave and help your constituents who are asking you to investigate. And we're going to see a lot of benefit from this, I think.
Yeah, excellent. Well, so anything else you wanted to cover? Or how can people support your effort and where should they go?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate the time that you've given Mimi and I to talk about this project. We think we're very encouraged by what we've seen. We think it's very important for everybody around the country, especially those who didn't know that anybody was working on this. Like, have courage, or take courage, I should say, and have hope because you were right. Your loved one was injured or murdered, and there should be justice for that. You can see what we're doing. I know that you're going to post it on your Substack, so
Mhm.
that's www.vireslaw.group. That's our website, and you can see there where we've posted some of these briefs. Additionally, at this time, you can support our work, and we greatly appreciate that because this has been many, many, many hours. If you want to support the work that we're doing right now, you can go directly to our website. It is not tax deductible if you make a payment there. But you can also go to Former Fed's Freedom Foundation. Sasha, I'll give you the link for
Uh-huh.
that and select AG Action in your donation. That is a tax deductible donation, and they've been gracious to partner with us on that. So thank you. And Mimi, go ahead if you had something you wanted to share.
No, yeah, that's great. And like we kind of said before, this is a spiritual war. And we know that God is on our side. We know God is equipping us for this fight and he's strengthening us as we, have to keep fighting these walls and kind of breaking through these barriers. We're seeing them open now. And so now is the time for people to get hope. Now is the time for people to feel reinvigorated.
Yeah.
And like we said, like just keep speaking out, keep telling the truth, because that is what has changed things. And so that is crucial. I mean, this all happened. This all started because victims and victims' families reached out and asked for help for wrongful death suits. They told the stories of what happened to their loved ones, and those stories that they have power. What's happened to people has power. And so I just want to encourage people to keep talking, keep telling the truth.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your work. I'm really encouraged by it. I hope my readers are encouraged, and I hope my readers will support your effort. I'll definitely support your
Thank
effort.
you.
And please keep me posted on your developments
Yeah,
so we
yeah, we will.
can communicate updates or any information that you need. You know where to find me. So,
Thank you. And Sasha,
Absolutely.
thank you
Thank
for
you.
all the efforts you've made. You have been tireless in this, and we really applaud what you've been able to do. And thank you for having us today to be able to share these updates. We appreciate
Yes,
it.
thank you.
great. Thank you so much. So I'm going to